wide angle. All right, where's that pin at, bro? There it is. There we go. Thank you. All right, so capture everything I can. So I'm gonna recap what John taught us and like why we do what we do. Okay. Obviously, we did the beam and the chair. She's already in the treatment chair. I'm gonna teach the anatomy right quick. So basically, what we're trying to do is to find the prescription for the machine, and we need to make it reproducible every day, so that when the patient comes in, we're hitting the exact same spot. So since we don't have sophisticated measurement techniques like Neurostar and SOAs and all that language you have to learn, this actually seems to be a lot easier. The first step is kind of based on something called the beam method. It's a universal way to find anatomical landmarks, or kind of like the same markers they use for EEGs technology. We have a particular area we're trying to find in the brain called the left prefrontal cortex. That is about a quarter size region of the brain. It usually kind of falls in the hairline about right here. Okay. About right there. And so it's called F3. So that's why this is referred to as an F3 method. So it should be around right here where a treatment location will ultimately end up at. Something like that. Am I right so far?
Right so far.
Yep. We need a few landmarks to be able to find that. Okay. So what we did was, one, we need to position the cap in such a way that it's reproducible. So we need to use landmarks on the head to be able to position that cap. The first landmark is called the nasion. It's right between the eyes. It's like the bridge of the nose. So if you feel your forehead and where it dips down in between your eyes, that's called the nasion, right? That is our landmark for the measuring tape. So you'll take the measuring tape, put it at 0 at the nasion. Once the cap is on, you're going to measure from the nasion up to the lip of the cap, and then document it on the side of the cap here. That way we'll always pull the cap on, and it'll be the same position on the forehead. You'll also write a line in the front of the cap that corresponds with the midline of the nasion. So you draw an imaginary line from the nasion up to the cap. That's what that line is right there. So when we position the cap the next day, we'll put the cap on, line that line up, and measure 3 centimeters to the lip of this cap, so we know it's in the same spot. To be double sure, we also want to put lines on the side of the cap so it lines up the same way each time. So our next landmark is the tragus. The tragus is this little piece of cartilage in the front of the ear, right here, the anterior of the ear. And we want to look at the lip of that, the very peak of it, and line it up. Like draw an imaginary line up from the tragus, and that's this line. That way, the cap will be the same on the sides too. You do one on this side, that side you mark it. Kink, kink. So our next anatomical mark is the tragus. The first was the nasion and the tragus. The third and final landmark is the inion. And I'll take that. So the inion, Avery, can you lean your head forward, please? All right. So the inion is like the little peanut in the back of the head. So as your head kind of circles around, there's like almost like a shelf where the head starts dropping down. Okay. You can feel this by kind of running your finger down the head. I always have to close my eyes. As soon as I see it starting to curve back towards the neck, that is kind of like the apex of the back of the head. It's called the inion. It's always easiest to feel when you close your eyes, in my opinion. And you'll mark that on the cap here. That way you put this cap on, you got your midline, inion, and your tragus all lined up. It'll be the same every day. Okay? And you can slide back. All right, so now we have our measurements. We also need to find the vertex of the head. What's the midpoint of the head? So we're going to measure from the nasion, and you can do it probably 2 different ways. 0 of the nasion all the way back to the inion. You document that measurement. So let's just say the number was 36. I think it was 36.
35.
It was 35. Okay, so it's 35. You take half of that. So distance from nasion to inion divided by 2.
17.5.
Which would be 17.5. So you mark on the tape measure 17.5 and put a dot. Then we're going to go from tragus over to tragus. You're going to measure that. You're going to go through that dot you just made for the nasion inion, and you'll mark the midpoint of that. So that one's 36 side to side. We marked 18. Right? And we'll use that though for those. And this is a little bit different. typically in the beam where those spots intersect, that's the vertex of the head. Okay. So on this one, we kind of recorded and circled. This position right here is considered the vertex. So once we have the vertex, you need to hover over to kind of get this. We're going to use this little tool here. What is this called, John?
The quick grid.
This is called the quick grid. And you're going to take the quick grid. I don't know how to orient it.
Put it on the CZ.
It's probably like this. So there's a marker that says tragus.
And always think when you go to place this, this over CZ, CZ should always read, if you're standing behind the patient, CZ should be like you're reading out of a book.
Okay.
The text should be perfectly left to right.
Okay.
So you'll never have it angled one way or the other.
Okay. So this, there's a marker here that says tragus. I want to put this little X right here over that CZ spot I found. And then I'm going to rotate this so that it lines up with the tragus.
There you go.
Okay. So what I mean by that is where it says tragus, there's a line here. I'm drawing an imaginary line with my mind's eye, and that should line up with where her tragus is right here. Okay. So CZ here, tragus lined up. We're going to lay this down on the patient's head, and basically you're going to take a pen and trace all of these open spaces, and the 9 dots, and these 3 lines over here. Once you've traced that, the cap will look like this, and the doctor or whoever else is doing it will use these as landmarks to find the motor threshold. Now, here's the conceptual part that I think will help y'all understand this, because this is what I had to figure out. So there's a part of the brain called the motor strip. The motor strip runs in the brain. So remember, looking through the scalp in our mind, in our brains, the motor strip runs from tragus to tragus like a headband. It kind of runs like this. Okay. Why is the motor strip important? Well, it's important because those cells are predictably arranged, and they're motor cells that tell our voluntary movement what to do, right? So there's something called the homunculus, and basically it's a drawing or a depiction of how those cells are arranged. So there's like the face is controlled over here, and like the chin, the neck, and the shoulder, the arm, the elbow, and then finally the hand. And what we're looking for is the hand. And in the homunculus, the hand is organized like this. So closer to the CZ is going to be pinky, and as we get closer to the tragus, we're going to go ring finger, middle finger, index finger, thumb. So for example, if we stimulate, say here, and the pinky moves, that means that the thumb is further this way, because that's how the cells are arranged. Okay. So these little grids kind of give us landmarks to kind of help us approximate that without having to really know that concept, right? So if I'm on here and I keep getting pinky, I know I need to go closer to the tragus to get closer to the thumb, okay, for 99.9% of people, okay? So the role is, the first step is going to find that thumb, and that's what we just did. You line the coil up with each of these gridded numbers, and we'll number them 1 through 9. Okay, like just like we read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And whichever one was strongest, that's going to be our starting point. Right? So for her, we thought 1 and 4 kind of the strongest 2, correct?
Right.
So we've determined that, and I'm kind of speaking for myself for reference. Once I determine that, say 1 is the best one, and the energy level we used was 50, really that step is complete. And the next step, we're going to refine that dose. So we're looking for 2 things, the location and the dose. So right now we're primarily trying to find the best location, right? And then we're going to refine the dose on the next step. And the final step, once we have that dose and location, it'll probably move forward to that location. Okay, gotcha.
When we have